And how fast would the vessel go? Would they go side by side in a very long sweep?
We are still, and we'll have to have these discussions with our colleagues from Fugro, working out the details of the techniques to be used, which will vary depending on the topography of the ocean floor. So there's a range of possibilities. We haven't got the full detail of our search plan because we need to do that on a collaborative basis with Fugro. So there's no simple answer. Sometimes you'll have to follow the contours as they're known. There are others where it's a flat area where you can do long tows and pick up the sort of definition you need. And in some areas it's going to be so complex we'll have to do a close examination much slower. We still hope that that area can be covered within a year if we have to cover the whole area.
Just one other comment on that. This is a towed vehicle, not an autonomous one as we were using in some of the earlier searches, which means it's also in constant contact with the vessel. So there's some instant information available.
Right, and sorry, can you give us just the dimensions of the orange block? That's the 60,000 square kilometres.
Yep.
Can you give us a width and a length?
Off the top of my head, I can't. It's of the order of 80 kilometres wide, and the length, therefore, is about 700 kilometres. Broad terms.
To put it into some perspective, it's about the area of the size of the state of Tasmania.
Or about half the size of Peninsular Malaysia for our Malaysian colleagues.
Has Chinese government been consulted or been coordinated when you make the selection of the contractor?
Yes, the Chinese government have been kept in the loop and informed about the discussions and their own involvement in relation to the mapping, which will continue for another couple of months. And so the Chinese government have been kept informed with what's happening.
Will Chinese cover some costs, part of cost or not?
Well, I can't comment on that. They haven't indicated an intention to assist in that way, but obviously they'll be involved in future discussions as time goes by.
What, if any, impact has the MH370 situation had on this operation?
Well, on the water, none. We've kept the operations going as scheduled. There's been no personnel taken away from this operation to go to MH370. Clearly, Malaysian Airways and the Malaysian government have got two problems on their hand rather than one, two extraordinary circumstances, two unique occasions, and so clearly they've had to put some priority focus in dealing with the immediate issues surrounding MH370, but that has not in any way interrupted the search and the work that's being undertaken off the coast of Western Australia.
Will the Chinese expert be involved in the deep sea search? I mean, with the Fugro experts? And also, are there any kind of cooperation between the commercial companies and the Chinese side? I mean, the experts or technicians?
Well, there are two stages to this process. The first has been the mapping of the seafloor, which the Chinese have been actively involved by having a vessel present, and their data will be provided obviously to the second element of this operation, and that is the actual search for the aircraft or any remains that there might be. So that information will be helpful to the contractors, along with the information that's provided by the other vessels involved in that search.
And if I could add to that, there are Chinese technical experts that have been based in Canberra for a considerable period of time that we keep in close contact with, so that we always take account of Chinese views and keep the Chinese officials informed of what's going on.
So is that right to understand that the Chinese experts are mainly involved in the mapping of the seafloor rather than the deep sea survey and deep sea search?
That's the arrangement we currently have with the government of China, yes.
Would the contract that you've signed cover the recovery of wreckage, or would that be a separate?
The contract is to search for, if possible, localise a debris field and to map and photograph the debris field. But at this stage, we haven't completed an agreement as to recovery.
How deep can the towed sauna go into the sea?
It can get pretty close to the ocean floor, to the depth necessary to get a wide enough swathe across the ocean floor. The equipment that we've agreed with our colleagues in Fugro is capable of searching the entire area that we have specified there.
The Australian involvement here is just purely about trying to find parts of the aircraft. Are you dealing with Malaysian authorities about theories at all, what might have brought the aircraft down here at all? Are we any closer to finding out what's happened there?
Well, essentially, the investigation is the responsibility of Malaysia because that is the flag that the aircraft carried. So we're obviously been assisting in that process, but that is their responsibility. They've asked us to look after this search phase, and that's the initiatives we're taking at the present time. But clearly there'll be a high level of cooperation in relation to investigation when the time comes. One would imagine that if a decision is made to recover debris, that it's very likely to be brought to shore in Australia because that's the closest place to bring it. And then decisions will have to be made about what further action needs to be taken there. Clearly the priority will be to recover the black box recorders, and it could be that sufficient information can be obtained from that sort of data and an inspection to make it unnecessary to recover debris, but those sort of issues would have to be decided on the basis of what we find when the search has achieved its objective.
Can I just ask Martin, are we any closer to nailing down theories as to why the aircraft may have come down in Australia?
That's an area, as I think I've said before, where it is a Malaysian responsibility to undertake this investigation, and the international arrangements in relation to that say Malaysians are the ones who talk about that. I'm not authorised by our Malaysian colleagues to speak on behalf of their investigation.
I appreciate it's a bit of a delicate subject at the moment, but is it likely that Australia will be left with paying that bill for this contract?
Well, the federal government has indicated right early that we are prepared to make a contribution. We see this as an international obligation, an obligation to the Australian families, but also to the families of the other passengers who are on board. And we are expecting to make a significant, and have already made a significant contribution towards the search effort, and we will do what we need to do to make sure that the search is thorough. But we are expecting that there will be a financial partnership with the Malaysians and potentially others that would assist in that cost, bearing in mind that at this stage each country has essentially borne its own costs. So the Chinese vessel is being funded by the Chinese government, the Malaysian hardware that's been involved in the process has been funded by Malaysia, and other countries, and there are probably a dozen or more of them that have contributed to this effort. They've paid their own costs.
When do you expect the deep sea search to commence?
Well, we're optimistic that it will begin in September. There's sufficient mapping already being completed for, obviously, to have places where we can start. But we expect that by the time the sonar search is able to commence, most, if not all, of the mapping will be completed. Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and we hope that the search is successful. As soon as possible, we remain determined to put in the maximum effort, and we look forward to working with Fugro to move to this next stage of the search so that families can get the answers they want as quickly as possible.